If the Metro North Committee would come to order, please. We have two public speakers today. The first public speaker is Randy Glucksman.
Good morning. Last week, commuters in the metropolitan area, including our Port Jervis and Pascack Valley Line riders, were spared from an NJ Transit rail strike. I appreciate the efforts of Metro North staff made to provide alternate services and to also accept all tickets from west of Hudson Metro North stations. On Wednesday, March 16th, 4 days ahead of the strike deadline, I addressed the New Jersey Transit Board of Directors on behalf of our riders and stated that in case they did not know, commuting is stressful, and urged them to reach a settlement sooner rather than later. To say that the region's riders dodged a bullet would be an understatement, because NJ Transit admitted that only about 40% of their daily ridership would have been able to be accommodated by the alternate services. You may recall that in October of 2014, Amtrak reported that their then 104-year-old North River tunnels connecting New York Penn Station with Secaucus Junction Station would require major repairs due to Superstorm Sandy damage from 2012. Although there is no immediate date for the undertaking of this work, there needs to be a high-level conversation on this side of the Hudson River about what would happen if one or both tunnels was suddenly removed from service. Our west of Hudson riders using NJ Transit and Amtrak riders would be in a very similar situation as they would have been had a strike taken place last week. To provide redundancy in cross-Hudson rail travel, serious consideration must be given to an extension of the 7 line to Secaucus Junction. Please think of the planning that went into your strike contingency plans and the huge economic impact that the loss of travel across the Hudson River would have on the region and the entire United States. Thank you.
Thank you. The second and last speaker is Murray Bowden.
Good morning. My name is Murray Bowden. What you're hearing is quiet. Pretty much silence. A week ago, we went to the Bronx Botanical Garden, and when we walked out, the first thing I heard was a Metro North whistle blowing at the station. We walked all around the park. When we were on the Bronx River Parkway side, I could still hear the train horns. Joe, I've asked you why Metro North blows the horns. No answer. Pat tells me Long Island Railroad doesn't blow the horns. This board, you're responsible for finding out that New York Central designed the train horns 50 years ago. And the inability of Joe to lead Metro North into the future is your responsibility to replace him. You're buying railroad cars that are outdated. You're buying married pairs, when at the very least you should have is open cars in 4-car units. Joe said that we can't repair them because they're 2-car sets. Well, then you put them in, repair them 2 at a time. You watch the cranes in New York City? The man stands up there with a little box over here, controls the crane. If you got to control a train going to repair shop, break a 4-car unit into 2, stand there with a little gizmo in there, and put it where it belongs. You, the board members are responsible for what's going on. If he can't get it right, and you're ordering too many cars with control cabs because you bought married pairs 50 years ago, if he can't figure it out, then fire him. Howard Milstein, when he was running the Tappan Zee Bridge and it was an accident, he said, find out who that man was responsible and fire him. This board has got to learn how to say, fire that man because he doesn't know what he's doing. It's time. Don't you watch television? There's a whole political campaign going on. And what people are saying, you ain't paying attention. Not him, you, because you can fire him. And it's time to fire him.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes, please? Second? Those in favor? Minutes are approved. Are there any changes to the work plan?
There are no changes.
In that event, may I have your report, please?
Thank you. During the month of February, our trains operated reliably at 95.3%, which was above the 93% goal. Only 228 trains, or 1%, were delayed greater than 15 minutes. Our peak service operated at just about 94%, the off-peak at 95.1%, and weekend was at 97.9%. The west of Hudson service operated at 97% for the month of January. Our fleet continues to perform well in January with a mean distance between failures, the MDBF, of 214,040 miles before a train experienced a mechanical problem, which was 7% above the new goal of 200,000. The M8s exceeded their mean distance between failure goal of 300,000 miles for the month by over 66%. Preliminary east of Hudson ridership figures for February indicate an increase of 3.4% versus February of last year. Non-commutation ridership led the way with an increase of 4.7% due primarily to the unseasonably mild winter weathered in February. Total year-to-date ridership is 3% above 2015, which again was a record-breaking year. West of Hudson ridership figures for February are not yet available from New Jersey Transit. Customer complaints continued on a downward trend as we had a 55% less complaints during February as compared to last year. Our schedules are going to change on Metro North's east of Hudson lines effective Sunday, April 3rd. This schedule change will address on-time performance issues in peak periods in order to improve service reliability. It'll address customer requests where feasible, and it's going to allow for critical capital track and infrastructure projects to occur. As you know, necessary track work also brings the increased probability of train delays. To combat this, we adjust our train schedules to accommodate off-peak and weekend track outages. This will allow us to perform the critical maintenance and capital construction projects while minimizing any impact on our customer travels. We continue to monitor our service and review input from train crew observations, customer feedback, and customer counts to look at ways to continually improve our schedule. Our upcoming April 3rd schedule change will reflect necessary adjustments to provide customers with a schedule they can count on as we continue to rebuild track and infrastructure at critical locations. Two of these projects are the continuation of the Devon movable bridge repair work and the overhead catenary replacement. Metro North and the Connecticut Department of Transportation have coordinated the next stage of work on these projects with the upcoming schedule change. After completing Track 3 repairs on Devon Bridge last year, Metro North forces will now start steel repair work and replacement of bridge timbers and running rails on Track 1. Simultaneously, ConnDOT's contractor will replace the catenary on Track 1, and this work will take place until the next schedule change this fall. So that temporary Devon platform that I brought pictures of in the past to go and show you, which was built by our own forces, will again be utilized to make this work continue. And it's a credit to the forces that they were able to put that together, put the lighting on it, and it has been so successful that we were able to maintain a regular schedule with it. To coincide with our schedule change starting on Monday, April 4th, 2 quiet cars are going to be available on every train, peak and off-peak, thanks to the expansion of our popular Quiet, Calm, Mute program. Currently, the program provides for 1 quiet car on all peak trains. On weekday inbound trains, the last 2 cars will be designated quiet cars, and on all weekday outbound trains, the first 2 cars will be designated quiet cars. We are expanding this program in response to customer suggestions, and as requested by the customers, onboard signage will indicate the quiet cars. MTA and Metro North have teamed up again to sponsor a small business outreach and employment information session at the Orange County Chamber of Commerce in Montgomery, New York, on March 31st from 10 a.m. to noon. This networking event will benefit minority and women-owned businesses, disadvantaged business enterprises, and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses in the Hudson Valley. The effort is part of MTA's Small Business Development Program, SBDP, a set of initiatives designed to help small and disadvantaged firms grow capacity and succeed as MTA's prime contractors. In addition, MTA and Metro North representatives will be on hand to share information about Metro North procurement opportunities and MTA employment opportunities and MTA police recruitment efforts. We are thankful for the support and encouragement we've received from all of our board members on these outreach efforts, in particular Susan Metzger in the planning of this event. As we look forward to engaging firms looking to do business with the MTA or individuals seeking a job opportunity within the MTA family. Over the last month, I traveled to both Albany and Hartford to meet with our partners on the state level and discuss the progress we have made so far in rebuilding Metro North, the importance of the capital program, and the need for continued commitment to invest in and improve our infrastructure. I want to mention that many of these legislators recognized our ongoing efforts to provide safe and reliable service and praised the dedication and commitment of our employees. As you know, Jim Henley has been named the permanent general counsel at New York City Transit Authority. Jim has been acting in an interim capacity for the past 7.5 months. I am grateful for Jim's contribution in the time that he was here at Metro North. I wish him every success in his new permanent position working for New York City Transit's new president, Ronnie Hakem. And I'm pleased to announce that Rich Gans has returned to Metro North to assume a position of general counsel and welcome him to today's committee meeting in his new capacity. Rich is a 17-year Metro North veteran sorry, who departed Metro North over 4 years ago to become general counsel on the Long Island. I want to acknowledge and express my gratitude for the fine work of Susan Sarch, who served as acting general counsel during Jim's departure. Susan did an extraordinary job leading Metro North's law department over the past months. Jim's departure strained the resources of the law department, and Susan handled the resulting pressure on the department and her increased responsibility with the utmost grace and professionalism. I thank Susan for her dedication and her hard work. And now I'm ready to answer any questions.
Questions? If none, I'm looking forward to the Orange County event, and welcome back, Mr. Gans. May we have the safety report, please?
Yes. Good morning. The safety report can be found beginning on page 17. This new report represents the metrics that were presented at last month's safety committee. The 12-month rolling average for customer injuries is up compared to the previous 12-month rolling average. This increase is due to the Valhalla incident, which accounted for 46 injuries. The 12-month rolling average for employee injuries is essentially flat versus the previous 12 months. In looking at our leading indicators, there were 28 total C3RS reports received in January. This brings the total number of reports since the program began to over 600. In addition, we just completed the training of our employees for the mechanical and engineering C3RS groups. This program for those groups will be rolled out in April. This concludes the safety report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Hearing none. Chief Cohen, may we have the police report, please?
Yes. Good morning. For the month of February, we had 11 incidents compared to 8. We were +3. The small spike was driven by larcenies, 10 compared to 5. Out of those 10, there were no patterns, although we did have 2 airbags, which is a little unusual. We haven't had that for a while. A 2009 Honda Accord, 2 airbags were taken. We had 1 robbery at Cortlandt Station where an arrest was made. We did survive St. Patrick's Day. We had 3 arrests just on the Metro North end, 11 summonses, 2 juvenile reports, and 12 aideds, and a numerous amount of alcohol was confiscated. We're continuing our homeless outreach efforts. For year to date, we have taken 14 individuals to the hospital and provided 103 people with shelter. Also, as part of our quality of life initiative, we've issued 80 summonses, 15 of which for administrative code violations for panhandling. If there's any questions.
Questions? Hearing none? Yes?
I don't know if it's working, but just as a quick follow-up. Thank you. The homeless initiative you were talking about has I guess we're nearing the end of the real cold part, maybe today or tomorrow, so that's good for the homeless. But with respect to those who you've spoken to but who choose not to go to the shelters, have we continued to look at the reasons why, and maybe could you sum that up and what our response is to that, please?
Right, and that's one of the more frustrating issues, but we continue to work with our partners at the BRC. They have professional individuals who can make an assessment on the scene, even if the person is not evidencing harm to himself or others. They can make an assessment and they can have that person removed, and we have done that. They do numerous follow-ups with these individuals, and that's going to continue. You mentioned the warmer weather. Sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of these shelters, particularly in Grand Central, a lot of shelters are closed during the day. People move out, so they come to Grand Central for the day, and then they'll go to the shelter at night. So the daytime population, we may not see it. We see it as much as we would like to. But we're going to continue making those contacts, and I bring this number with me. Just year to date, over 9,000 contacts have we made with individuals in Grand Central 125th Street alone. Now, a lot of that is the same individual over and over again. And we're working with Metro North, the BRC, and the police department, as well as EMS and other services that are available.
Well, you mentioned 125th Street. Users of that, which I am periodically, including last week, can't help but notice the profound problem there of apparently homeless people who aren't really waiting for a train, being in the directly inside or directly outside of the facility there. Now, I just point that out, and maybe you can respond to that. But also, the thing that I was trying to get at, and thank you for your explanation, and we've done this on and off, for probably a year already, preceding some of the news reports of it. But the notion that people are refusing shelter because of the condition of the shelters is one that greatly troubles me, and I realize that your answer is that's beyond their jurisdiction, but I did want to point that out, but I would like to hear your response about 125th Street, please.
We've put a lot of resources into 125th Street as well as Metro North, both on the inside and on the outside. I was up there last week for St. Patrick's Day, and on the outside by the stairwells was clear of debris and of individuals. On the inside, we have between 2 and 4 police officers assigned there on a daily basis. We do frequent checks of all the areas, both upstairs and downstairs. We work with the NYPD outside, and as well as the BRC makes frequent trips up there, to deal with individuals. We issue summonses. We've brought numerous people to hospitals and shelters from 125th Street as well. And we're going to continue those efforts.
I have a number of other questions, but I think it would be more efficient to do it in another setting. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll contact you, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? In that case, may we hear about the information items, please?
Of the 3 information items that I put in there, you'll see that there's the annual Strategic Investment and Planning Studies report, the annual Elevator and Escalator report, both of which were available to answer any questions. But I would like Glenn to talk about the track program quarterly update, and I see...
I don't know if this is the right place, and if so, I'd like to ask a question about this perfectly superb report on achievements over the course of the past year. Is this the right place to do it?
Yes, but could you speak into your
Yeah,
microphone?
I will.
It's difficult to hear.
Joe, on page 31 of the book I never received, it indicates that in Ardsley, a 259-year lease was signed on October 28, 2015. 259-year lease? Somebody's got to be kidding. What is it about?
Did you say page 31?
31.
Okay.
Page 31, Ardsley.
You know, I'm going to have to get back to you on that
Will
one. I
you?
don't, yes, I will. I'll be more than happy to.
I'm not even sure if a
I think that's the
259-year
right,
lease
I
is
think that's the
valid.
Writers' Center. I think that's the Writers' Center at further up the line than Ardsley.
Could somebody just get back to us?
Most certainly will.
Right. The second question I have is, with respect to Peekskill, what kind of real estate submissions are going on there? Let me make a suggestion. If this is something where you need to get some information, I'd like to go over all of these leases, if I may, on 31 and 32 at your convenience. There's something a little troublesome here.
Commissioner, I think we need MTA Real Estate here, because
The
these are...
next question I have is again back in that real estate area, and I'm happy to do it offline. In Harrison, you have Avalon apparently into a contract. My question to you is, Avalon was the group that had this magnificent, huge, awful, disastrous fire over on the other side of the river in New Jersey, based on what people believed was shoddy workmanship in construction of wooden buildings. Are we comfortable that this group of Avalon are able to do the right kind of job for us? And if your answer is, I need to check, I'm happy to go offline.
Chuck, as you know, the leasing program is managed through MTA Real Estate, so I think to have a good conversation about most of these station items, we need them to be a part of the conversation. In terms of the Harrison TOD, they're building a garage for us, but this is being largely worked through with Harrison itself.
It's not a residence.
Oh, there's a TOD component to it, but what, our piece of the deal is for them to build a parking garage for our customers, which is our interest in it. In terms of the residential development, this is a partnership that we have with Harrison. But again, I think probably all of these items are best addressed with the folks from MTA Real Estate, who have been really taking the lead on all of them.
I would be more than happy to do it, but I would suggest, if I may, that somebody from Metro North join in that conversation.
Oh, absolutely, of
All right?
course. Oh, of
And I'm
course.
happy to do it at your convenience.
Sure.
Thank you. Glenn?
Thank you. The quarterly track update begins on page 61 in your book. This represents our work in January and February of 2016. Thus far, we had installed a little less than 7 miles of welded rail. We had performed 251 welds on our joints, installed 5 switches in Grand Central Terminal. The picture at the beginning of this report is actually ladder K in Grand Central Terminal. We did a major rehabilitation of track 38 within Grand Central Terminal, and we have installed 144 ties with our rail vac. We're beginning our automated inspections. The Sperry car has been working throughout the year. We're now over 10% complete. In the months of April, we will start our track loading vehicle, and shortly thereafter, our Mermac geometry car. In terms of structures work, we've been working on 2 overhead bridges, one on the Port Jervis, one on the Harlem. They're about 80 and 25% complete respectively. The good weather has helped us out there. Same thing for timber bridge decks. We've been working on one bridge on the Port Jervis and 4 bridges on the New Haven line. Walk Bridge, we completed all of the work that we had programmed inside the pivot pier. There are 80 roller shafts. We completed 90. We completed all of the 90, so that's done. So we are in good shape at Walk for keeping that bridge in service until CDOT replaces it. Direct fixation fasteners, we replaced 134 on the Park Avenue Viaduct and 126 within Grand Central Terminal. And on the New Haven side, our S program, we've done steel repairs on 5 bridges. The very last sheet in the report shows you our goals for 2016 with respect to tie installation, rail installation, grade crossings, welds, surfacing, and switch renewal. And one thing that is not on the report, which I wanted to say, because of the very good weather in January and February, we were able to accelerate our right-of-way cleanup in terms of tie stubs and old rail and OTM out on the right-of-way. We've made significant progress in addition to continuing our program work. Our production gangs came out of the barn early in March, so we're a few weeks ahead of last year. So we're looking forward to a good, strong year production-wise and cleanup-wise.
Excellent. Mr. Nordler.
It's very easy for someone sitting on this side of the table to criticize, but rare that they compliment. I've had an opportunity over the course of the past few months to watch the work your folks have done, both on the Hudson line and on the Harlem line. I congratulate you. You've done a superb job. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Your procurements begin on page 67. There are 6 procurement actions in the total amount of almost $10 million. $10,174,000. There's 1 non-competitive procurement in the total amount of $124,000. There are 5 competitive procurements in the total amount of $10,500,000, and they're $50,000, and there are no ratifications. I make a motion to recommend these procurements, and I need a second. Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
if I may, on behalf of the Borough President of the Bronx, I'd like to thank you very much for moving forward on the 4 stations. You are doing a service to the people of the City of New York, to the people of the Bronx, and indeed to the people of New Rochelle and to the north, who now will have the ability to draw on an employment pool they otherwise have had difficulty drawing upon. I thank you, and we appreciate it. The Borough President thanks you.
Thank you. I agree with you. This is serving a need, and it's good to see. Any other questions? Mr. Wortendijk.
Yes. There's a competitive one here on page 73, which is some sort of a consist that's made up to work on the rails and stuff. You know, I guess this consist has to be made up by a contractor, correct? Is this something that we're going to get a lot of bids on? I don't think many people, maybe contractors, are geared up for something like this.
Yeah, it's been bid on before. We have a couple of them, and Long Island has 2 of them, so it's not something that's totally new to the industry, and we'll be reporting back with how many bids we get on it, but we have put it out for competitive bid.
When you say we have it, is this going to be like a joint venture where we're going to, we have the equipment and somebody else?
No, this is something that they build for us, okay, that becomes a platform that the employees are able to work off of, that we can move that entire platform up and down the railroad to go and do the work.
Okay, but we don't own the platform.
We will own this piece of equipment. It becomes, I'm avoiding calling it a certain name, but anyways, it becomes a moving platform that we can move to different locations to be able to let our employees go and work, and that's what they're building for us.
All right, but are there many contractors that have something like this?
Al, do you have any idea how many we had the last time?
Yeah, we're expecting competition. We expect at least two, but possibly three suppliers. We're doing an outreach to make sure we do get competition on this. It is a best value contract, so.
Okay. I just looking at it quickly, what the information that I have here, it seems like a very complex thing that contractors wouldn't have laying around in their yard for somebody to, to use them. Anyway, I understand.
Mr. Bailey?
I think it's probably for Joe at the outset, but the H4, the Parsons Brinkerhoff, with respect to the Penn Station access, which is a great and worthy project. I agree with Mr. Merdler. It's great to see. I just have a question with respect to the work. There's a sentence that says, it talks about what PB will be undertaking for their contract. And then there's a sentence that says, lastly, a study of transit-oriented development and value capture opportunities will be prepared for the new Bronx stations. The use of the passive voice always throws me off in these. So is that included in the contract here, or is that the next step? And that's included in the scope work. Okay. And then when would we expect that by, approximately, those two portions?
We're expecting to complete it by the end of the next calendar year.
Commissioner Mordler?
End of 2017.
The TOD and value capture studies by the end of 17?
It may actually be completed before then, but the contract itself, this contract duration goes till the end of 2017.
And the scope of work includes that, though?
Yes.
Quick question on the
Thank you.
Placer on page 80. Why is there no allocation of MBE or WBE on the Placer?
The goals will be established when we actually put it out to contract. This is just a request to use the RFP process. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I got the wrong one.
You're wrong. They've established a zero goal.
Yeah, they did. Based upon what was available in the industry, they felt that there was no opportunities to subcontract work. Now, again, this is done, probably most likely will be done outside of the state of New York, which greatly diminished the capacities also.
I find that a bit troublesome. If you could have somebody give me a breakdown as to why that was done, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, we have a breakdown. We can provide it to you, sir.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair? Further to that question, where is this being built?
Yeah. Rhode Island? Yeah, I'm sorry, it's Rhode Island is where this is actually being built.
Rhode Island.
Yes.
And there are absolutely no women or minorities in Rhode Island?
Certified in New York State? Apparently not, sir.
Well,
Again,
it's certified in New York State. Is it Rhode Island? What is it?
No, it's in New York State. I'm saying, as far as achievement of New York State goals, there was no New York State firms identified who could participate in this.
Yeah, but how about just plain people participating, whether they're New York State certified or not? The idea is to expand opportunities for minorities and women. And what we're doing is saying zero. That's not the right answer.
Chuck, as you know, we work very, very closely with DDCR, and they're actually consulted as part of this whole process. So the goal setting occurs in coordination and collaboration with DDCR, who surveys the industry to see whether there are opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses to participate in the contracting. As you know, Michael Garner and his shop have been extremely aggressive with respect to building up opportunities for small businesses, minority women-owned businesses, and we've had a lot of dialogue on that issue. So we will go back to DDCR and express your concerns, but this is just so that you know, this is not something that's being done unilaterally by Metro North. This is something that's being done in collaboration with DDCR.
Kathy, I have no complaint concerning the activities, desires, or ambitions of management of Metro North to provide these opportunities. But when I see a zero goal for a huge contract, It troubles me.
Oh, no,
and I think it
absolutely.
should trouble everyone.
No, and we'll go back to DDCR and see whether we can identify other opportunities for minority business participation.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Let me add one thing. I would ask Commissioner Malloy if we could discuss this topic in our next diversity meeting, because I think you hear the concern we have. Now, Commissioner Balin.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Mr. Furr's question, I was just struck by the answer because it's not being manufactured in New York. My concern would be New York jobs of any ethnic background. I wondered, was that part of the factor of analysis in the process? And maybe you could explain why the great state of New York doesn't seem to ever get these contracts. I mean, if they do, the jobs are elsewhere.
We do a pre-evaluation of what's available in the industry. Now, maintenance away equipment is very specialized. Nationally, there's very few firms that do a lot of this specialized equipment. As far as what's available in New York State, there were no firms that were identified that had the capacity or the interest to do this. Oftentimes what happens is that much of this work is by these specialty firms, and people just choose not to enter into it because they're secured in that particular industry with these types of vehicles. So it's been...
Was it part of the process to ask where you're going to manufacture?
By just being aware of doing the responsibility review of the particular firm, yes. I mean, we do have those discussions.
Is there any reach out to see if we could find entities that could actually employ New Yorkers for this?
We do, in terms of the fact that when we receive the initial estimate and the breakdown of the work scope, at that point in time, we would then go do that review to see if there's any opportunities within the state of New York. Again, part of that is just for the discussions when we actually bring in the firms to discuss best value and where there are opportunities and where they could subcontract work potentially in the state of New York or elsewhere. So that's all part of the overall best value discussion when we talk to each and every one of the firms.
If I may, I don't mean to beat this horse beyond death, but it seems to me one of the very best values you can acquire or obtain is to make sure that women have an opportunity, to make sure that minorities have an opportunity, and that is a value that should be a factor, not just cost. And I seconded the motion to approve this, but I would urge you as strongly as I know how to take a good hard look at what can be done both here and in the future to move that goal forward. It's an important goal.
Any additional discussion? Yes.
I think just to consider, maybe we should have a sentence or a fact on these types of RFPs, summaries to the board of the job component, estimated number and percent in New York. I think we should consider that. I think, within what's allowable, I think we should do our best to employ New Yorkers. It is New York textile is at stake here. So.
Susan, can I ask?
Yes.
It says in the staff summary that 4 technical and cost proposals were received from 4 firms. I guess the question is, were any of those 4 firms, and obviously Plesser was one of them, so we eliminate Plesser, were any of the other 3 firms planning on doing the work in New York State?
No, sir.
So it's not a question of we didn't get additional bids. Unfortunately, we didn't get any bids from companies that wanted to do the work in New York State.
Yes, sir, that'd be the correct way to...
That'd be the correct way to look at it.
Characterize it, yes.
So the issue is, I guess the question is, why not? And that's a question both for Metro North and for Empire State Development Corp., which is the, economic development agency of the state of New York, to ask them why we don't have anyone in New York State who was interested in bidding on a project of $4 million, which is not an insignificant sum. So do we, when we do these type of procurements, do we have any conversation with Empire State Development on opportunities for New York State companies?
Yeah, and Mr. Gann just whispered in my ear telling me just that. I mean, absolutely, we do send these awards out when they go off outside the New York State, so they're aware of it, so they're to be doing the process of review themselves, knowing that this amount of work is leaving the state of New York. Again, we work with them then, so in the future, or if they want to have any kind of feedback or questions, we would entertain it at that point.
Okay. So they are well aware that this contract and some others leave the state of New York, and Empire State either cannot find a company in New York State willing to do the work, or there is no company in New York State that wants to do the work. It could be either or answer to that question.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
But let me add a footnote to that. It seems to me that if you're going to be placed in the position where there are none in New York, and the only one available hypothetically is Rhode Island, that does not deter you, or should not deter you one iota, from saying to that company, hey, how about taking care of providing opportunities for women and for minorities, and let's get this moving.
No, those are two separate
The question
issues.
I have, I agree with you.
Those are two
My
separate
point,
issues.
again, I seconded this.
Right.
So I have no problem with that concept. I have the problem with the following concept. It's time, it's past time, to say to those who get contracts from a public agency, you have a public responsibility to ensure that women, minorities, and everyone gets a fair opportunity and a fair shake to make a living, and I thank you.
Additional discussion? Hearing nothing, may I have a vote? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The procurements will be recommended to the board. The information items? I mean, the monthly reports?
Right. Monthly reports are all in your book. If you have any questions, we're available to go and talk about it, but they're all in there.
Joe,
Yes.
I'm sorry to do...
Commissioner
If you look
Mordler?
at page 86, listing delay categories, the single largest delay category is police. And I'd like to understand why that is so, particularly at Metro North.
I'm going to take the first crack at this, Chief. The reason is every time we call for a non-payment of fare or abuse on the train or harassment that's occurred on the train or anything else, that falls into the police category. So in some ways, there's a lot of that. I just had a discussion with John about it this morning that we're going to take a look at whether or not we should be breaking that out to where the police are responding. It's not really a police action. There are police actions where we've had a number of times where they turn around and they ask for a hold on all the tracks because of something that has happened in the neighborhood. But these all get lumped in under the police, and it gives kind of an unfair skewing of the numbers towards police activity. But the police activity in most of these cases they're responding to a customer issue, all right, that we have had, and it really should be a passenger issue that we're talking about that's been resolved with the police.
My eye was in the first category, there's a six-fold increase over last year.
Mr. Merle, if I could just add on to that, February is an aberration. Typically, if you look at the police category for Metro North, it's somewhere down in the 15 or 20% range, sometimes low, most of the times lower. Unfortunately, on the afternoon of February 1st, there was a significant service disruption on the Harlem line, and due to that particular event, that generated the high percentage in the month of February for police. So there was only one event that triggered the majority of those police delays.
What was the event and why wasn't it attributable to that event rather than police?
The event is actually listed on the subsequent page. It actually was a trespasser being struck at Botanical Garden Station around 3:30 in the afternoon. That actually lasted till about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening, and that basically precipitated the high number of customer delays in February. So that's the answer to that one.
I'm not sure I'd characterize that as a police action. Okay, thanks.
Which is why I'd like to have an opportunity to come back to you, because we were going through the same thing. It stuck out, and that's why it's something that we will review and get back to you on.
Commissioner Balin.
To follow up on what Chuck was just doing, but in a slightly different way, the other couple of things that jump out from that chart are that is still, although it's much improved from last year, it's still, to me, the engineering unscheduled and the maintenance of equipment. I still don't understand. That seems to be like a high number, particularly the aggregate, forget the percentage. I thought maybe, it's clear that weather, environmental, even police, depending on how you define it, are things that we can't control. But we can control engineering, scheduled and unscheduled, it seems to me, is still inordinately high. I don't understand it. And maintenance of equipment, I don't understand why our maintenance of equipment should be causing nearly 15% of our delays.
To answer that, Mr. Balin, if you look at the overall engineering category over the last several years, there have been significant reductions in the number of train delay minutes in that particular category. With the increased level of infrastructure work, there is currently very little opportunity to schedule out all impacts due to infrastructure work. As Joe had mentioned in the opening statement, every time we do a schedule change, we do what schedule modifications are possible without significantly increasing running time to accommodate the maximum amount of track work. If you look at the maintenance of equipment category, again, those numbers are relatively low. If you look at 2015, year-to-date, we were at 1,430. This year in 2016, for the first 2 months, we're at 658. So we've had both downward trends in both categories. And just to state the obvious, as we continue to reduce the total quantity of delay minutes, even small numbers of customer delays will generate a significant percentage, since all the categories need to add up to 100% as we go through this.
Well, that's why I said the aggregate number to me is striking. And I think last year, as I recall, was the high, and it was called an aberration because it was largely in response to a lot of safety checks and some special projects that were going on with respect to safety. So we're back down where, we don't have it in front of us, but I bet you 14 is more in line with 16 than 15, but that's just an educated guess. But it's still very high. I'm just pointing out, it's just you have 658 instances through 2 months of unscheduled engineering issues that are things we can control that are causing delays to our passengers.
Just one point of clarification. Those numbers don't represent instances of events. It doesn't mean we had 615 track delay incidences. It indicates that there were 615 equivalent train delays. One incident in this report equates to 6 minutes of customer delay.
One incident relates to 6 minutes, so if one train were 20 minutes late, that would be 3 of these?
Yes, absolutely. We use this as a relative guide on how the railroad is impacting our customers' travel time. And I'd be more than willing, before the next committee meeting, to provide a trend graph on these categories to indicate whether the trends are up or down or remaining flat.
That's another example of something that's very misleading in this table, and sometimes it's to our advantage, sometimes to our detriment. That I bet you no one on this side of the table knew that, nor should they. I mean, I don't consider that logical, but if that's the consistent way of keeping track, okay. I think we really need to, as Mr. Zuckerman's raised, he's unavoidably out today, I gather, but he had some ideas on how to recategorize some of this. Some of this is just very confusing to us and to the public. The only other question I had was on-time performance. I thought maybe you could comment on February's peak time, the percentages for on-time, and maybe just put it in a context.
John, go ahead first.
With regards to February and the peak times, if you look at the overall system, the AM peak, which is the most difficult to deliver, we operated at 92.3%, which was an increase over what we delivered in the month of January. When you look at the PM peak, we operated at 93.9%, which was above our goal of 93. If you go down and you look at the breakdown on the Harlem and the New Haven lines, you'll notice that the PM peak on the Harlem was 92.1, and the PM peak on the New Haven was 93.5. Typically, those numbers are in the 95 to 97% range. And again, for the month of February, those were all impacted by the unfortunate incident on the afternoon of February 1st. Actually, February 1st generated about two-thirds of our significantly impacted trains, which are those trains greater than 15 minutes late, along with associated cancellations and terminations.
Additional questions?
Additional standees, this last question. Standees, is it on New Haven in particular, but a little bit on Harlem? Is this the result of people choosing to stand for one personal reason or another, or what drove that number last month?
Again, if you look at the AM peak standees of this year compared to last year, even with the significant ridership increase, we've had a significant decrease in standees in the AM peak. That's driven by a high degree of equipment fleet availability, which is also reflected in the MDBF numbers we reported. Unfortunately, if you look at the breakdown in February for the PM, the consist compliance numbers is below what is typical. And again, that was due to the event on February 1st. When we have that level of service disruption and we cancel and combine trains that generate standees that are not programmed, also as we take equipment and we turn it out of cycle, we might run an 8-car train where a 10-car train could be that generates standees due to that service disruption.
And I just want to add one thing. You know, John made one point about that high number on the on-time performance. We have not seen those type of numbers in several years here. You're seeing what's coming back right now is exactly what we said. We're running an extremely safe operation. As we've been running it safe, you're also seeing that the efficiency at all of these stations is going up. These are actually very good numbers. And the anomalies, okay, it's almost a shame that an anomaly can go and skewer things, but if you take a look at it compared, and that's where I would say to you, go back to that same 2014, use your comparison then, and you'll see what has been trending and where we are going. The other end is this is the first time I'm coming to you with a schedule change that isn't a blanket schedule change. We've gotten very, very specific on where we're making the changes because we're now getting very comfortable where the trend is, where we've got our choke points, and what specific trains we can go after to make a minor adjustment to, so it changes that choke point and we can take care of some of these rush hour incidents going forward. So we are getting much more strategic in the way that we are responding, and you're also seeing that also allows, because when you do the big schedule change, it leads right into what you were saying before. We have to wait to see how that affected ridership patterns and whether or not people are choosing different trains, and whether or not we then have to change the consist on those trains based on what we see is happening.
Thank you for the helpful explanation.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have a question for Mr. Kesich. Is the delay metric that we use and that is rather confusing an industry norm or something we've developed in-house?
Right now, it's something we've developed in-house. Currently, there is a distinction, for example, on how the Long Island does it versus how Metro North does it. If you look back probably prior to 2014, if you look at the Metro North numbers, you'd probably see thousands of incidences. In that case, previously what we reported was any incident that generated a train delay was reported to the board. And in that case, an incident could have been a 1-minute contributor or could have been a 30-minute contributor. To better reflect the actual contribution to customer delay, we basically sum up all of the delay minutes associated with that category, divide that by 6 minutes to give a relative indicator of what's contributing to customer delays.
And now, having said that, what I'd like to propose is that I'll sit down with Pat, and the two of us will look at whether or not there isn't a matrix that we would both be comfortable with going forward, and we'll bring that so that everybody on the board understands the matrix that we're using to go and do that, because there's been an awful lot of discussion here. I've heard the thing about dividing the minutes and everything else. I understand your concern with it. Let us take a look at it, and Pat and I will get together and talk about whether or not there's a better way to go and make this clearer to everybody.
Thank you. Is there any other issue to be brought to the committee? In that event, may I have a motion to adjourn? Second? Those in favor?